Chapter 21. Cara. Cara couldn't keep her heart from racing as they stood in front of David's sister's house. Would Sarah be able to help them? "I think it would be best if you let me do the talking at first," Cole said as he raised his hand to ring the bell. "I doubt she even knows of David's death yet." Cara nodded. Though she'd never had to be the one to tell a family their loved one was dead, she had heard from friends in the military how hard it was. It took a few moments before the door opened. A woman, thin and frail, stood on the other side. She didn't look much like David, but then Cara didn't look much like her sister either. "Are you two really sisters?" was a question she had heard so often growing up that it invaded her dreams for a time. In Sarah's case, the lack of resemblance could have also been due to her emaciated frame and balding head. "Can I help you?" "Yes, ma'am. My name is Cole Davenport, and this is my associate, Cara Hunter. I'm a criminal investigator. Can you tell me if you are Sarah Grissom?" Cole flashed his badge and waited as the woman's eyes flicked from Cole to Cara and back again. "I am. But I didn't call for a criminal investigator. What is this about?" "It's about your brother David, actually." Sarah's eyes widened and her grip on the door tightened. "Has something happened to David?" Cole nodded. "I'm afraid he's been killed." As Sarah's mouth dropped open, her knees folded and she began to sink to the floor. Cole rushed forward and propped an arm around the woman. "I know this is sudden news, and we will answer any questions we can for you, but we really need to ask you about David as well. Would that be possible?" Sarah nodded and opened the door wider to let them in. Cole kept his arm around the woman and helped her to a couch in the living room. Cara took a seat in one of the recliners that faced the couch. Though not elegant, the living room held a homey, comfortable feel, as if secrets were often shared within it. Sarah sat for a minute, her hand running absently up and down her arm. "How did he die?" "That's what we need to talk to you about," Cole said as he sat in the other recliner. "David was admitted to the hospital with melioidosis. Are you familiar with it?" Cara watched Sarah closely as Cole spoke. While she probably wasn't as versed in spotting tells as he was, her gut was generally accurate when it came to judging people's character. Sarah shook her head. "No, but it sounds like some sort of disease." "It is," Cara said, after Cole shot her a look that said she could explain. "It's a disease mainly found in tropical areas. I was studying it in order to try and create a vaccine." "I don't understand then. How did David get it? He hasn't been anywhere tropical." "Do you know how David was getting the money to pay for your cancer treatments?" Cole asked. For a split second, Sarah's eyes grew larger, and then her gaze slid to the side. Her hands twisted in her lap. "I don't know what you mean." "Sarah, I'm fairly certain David stole my research and possibly killed my colleague. I met David briefly when he interned for my department, and I know he wasn't a bad guy. However, I'm afraid he got mixed up with some. David didn't die from the disease. Someone shot him while he was recovering in the hospital, and we need to figure out who before more people get hurt." Sarah held her gaze for a moment before dropping her head into her hands. "I don't know who he was working for, but I guess I knew he was involved in something illegal. He told me that he had to, that it was the only way to afford the treatments. I told him we would find another way, but he was adamant." "Did he ever mention a name? A group?" Cole asked, leaning forward. Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. All he ever said was that it was just one job that would pay enough to cover all the treatments." Disappointment flooded Cara as Sarah broke down. She'd known it was a long shot, but she'd been hoping Sarah would be able to tell them something. Anything that would help her figure out who was behind all of this. Suddenly, the cufflinks jumped back into her mind. Sarah, did David own cufflinks? Sarah sniffed and wiped at her eyes. You mean the fancy things that go in buttonholes? Yes, specifically gold ones with a snake emblem etched on them. Sarah shook her head. No, I doubt he could have afforded them even if he had wanted them. Besides, he was afraid of snakes. He'd take on spiders or scorpions any day, but even little garter snakes freaked him out. There's no way he'd ever wear one. Cara exchanged a look with Cole. If David didn't drop the cufflink, then who had? And why? Did that mean David hadn't killed Steve? Thank you, Miss Grissom, for your time. We are so sorry for your loss. Cole stood and motioned for Cara to do the same. He pulled out a business card and placed it on the coffee table that sat in the middle of the room. If you think of anything else, please don't hesitate to call me. Through her tears, the woman nodded, and Cara and Cole took that as their leave to exit. I'm sorry that was a bust, Cole. We shouldn't have come all the way out here. Now it's late, and we'll never catch a flight back tonight. He placed a hand on her arm. Hey, first off, it was my idea to come out here, so there's no need for you to be sorry. Second, we learned that David possibly wasn't the killer. Not unless he began liking snakes at some point in the last few months. Third, we were able to tell Sarah the news in person. Believe me, it's worse if you get news like that over the phone. She looked at him, wondering when he'd gotten that phone call and whom it was about. It was obvious from his tone that he was speaking from experience. I suppose you're right. I just wish I knew what to do next. Cole checked his watch. Well, it's just after 8. I bet we could catch a red-eye back to Fire Beach. It would make for a late night, but I'm game if you are. Cara shrugged. Might as well. There's no reason to stay here. I just wish there was more I could do back home. Without Steve's help, finding a vaccine will take years. What did your boss say about sending help? Cara rolled her eyes. That he's working on it. Not too hard if you ask me. Maybe it's time to press him a little harder. See if we can get him to help in person. Cara would love nothing more than for Malone to show up and take charge. She was a researcher, not a CDC specialist. Not that Malone was either, but he certainly had more experience with stuff like this than she did. But what if he's in on it? Though she believed he was innocent, she hadn't been able to get Cole's words out of her mind since the moment he'd said them. Asking for it would be one way to find out, don't you think? Besides, what's that saying? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer? Cara stared at him, a small smile pulling at her lips. I bet you thought the same thing about me when you first came to Fire Beach. Cole flashed a charming grin and shrugged. It's possible. So where do I stand now? His eyes twinkled as he let go of her arm and walked toward the car. His words carried over his shoulder. Guess you'll have to wait and see. Cara smiled and shook her head before following him. She liked the fact that he could make her smile even in the midst of all the fear and chaos.